Good evening. Welcome to the June 12th, 2024 Littleton Board of Health meeting. We do have a quorum. We are waiting for 2 members who will be here, but we are going to get started. I was going to make a request of, so I'm promoting a panelist. Request the board that we consider altering our agenda order slightly and move reorganization of the board to the beginning. That was on last week's agenda. We decided to hold off since we did not have all members present at that time. I'm not sure what the board's pleasure is, if we would like to hold that until the end of our hearings, or if we'd like to start with that. Is there any thoughts or preferences from the board?
I would say hold and hope that Gino is able to join us.
Okay. Seeing no other opinions, we will hold that item until its regularly scheduled point on our agenda. All right, so that brings us to our, unless anyone has anything pressing, our 7 p.m. public hearing for 6 Porter Road. It is a request for deed restriction for some new construction in a basement. Not sure who we have representing 6 Porter. Hand up. Promote them.
Hi, sorry. I'm the architect for Porter for the Porter Road project, and I was and the client is joining us right now.
Wonderful. All right, if you'd like to get started, show your plans and what you're requesting, and we can work from there.
Okay. I wasn't clear on exactly what this was going to be, but I do have, do I share my screen?
You should be able to.
Okay, give me 1 second here. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, you guys see?
We can see your screen. Thank you.
Great. So for this project, we are taking the unfinished basement and finishing it into a media movie watching area and a game area with a little bit of storage and a bathroom, and an office area that as well. This is going to bump us over the room limit for the 5-bedroom. So they are requesting a deed restriction.
Yeah, most I don't have some guys stuff.
If that's the extent of the presentation at the moment, I'm going to read notes from Jim. I'm going to allow our health agent to make any comments he may have on it, and then open up to the board for any questions. So, from Jim Gareffi for 6 Porter Road. The property owners would like to finish the basement of their house. The sewage disposal system installed in this property was designed for 5 bedrooms. The house currently has 11 rooms, including 5 bedrooms. The proposed work would add another 3 rooms, including one labeled office/guest. Title V does allow the board to accept a deed restriction if the room count causes the house to exceed the capacity of the septic system, but the system cannot contain more than the number of bedrooms noted on the approved permit. I've attached a copy of the proposed basement work. Refer the applicant to the board to discuss the possibility of a deed restriction to allow the project to continue. Those are our notes from Jim. Francis, did you have anything else you'd like to elaborate or share on 6 Porter Road?
I can't think of anything else that we'd need.
Okay, at that point, I'm going to open it up to the board. We're going to alphabetical order. Kevin Baker. Can't hear you, Kevin.
Can you hear me now?
Can't hear you, Kevin. Oh, now we can hear you. Okay, go
Can you
ahead.
hear me now?
We can.
Typically, I think we've set precedent for this already, and I believe it's been to eliminate any dividing walls in the finished basement to allow folks to finish their basement, but not separate it in any way. So that puts it 2 rooms over the count, or I guess 1 room over the count allowed by Title V. So that would mean this would be a 12-room home, still containing 5 bedrooms with a 5-bedroom deed restriction.
So Kevin, are you suggesting that the wall in between the media area and the office area to be removed to make it 1 room? I'm not sure I understand.
Correct. That would be in line with the precedent this board has already set in regards to finished basements with what the septic system's already at capacity for bedrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, in my opinion, if we've had precedents before where we've done the 12th room as a deed restriction, and the entire basement has to have, like, that wall that's in between the office and guests and the media area has to go. And then I don't recall if we allowed storage areas. I know utility areas are utility areas. Yeah, that's not a problem. But the room up in the top left corner there, I would say that wall has to go if I remember our interpretation correct.
Does it have to go if it's well, if it's smaller
If I
than
may, unfinished space, generally, we have not considered a room.
Oh, I see it's unfinished. Sorry. I didn't see the word unfinished. All good. All good. I withdraw my comment.
Sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to step on you. I just wanted to make
that's
sure we
okay.
were.
No, utility areas and things that are unfinished, so that means there's no heating and nothing inside of it and all that other kind of good stuff. So I withdraw that comment. That's perfectly fine. So I amplify Mr. Baker's comments.
Dr. Wason.
First question for our architect. The whole basement is unfinished right now, so none of this is existing, including the bathroom.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I would say that precedent has already been set and matched on this property because it's at 11 rooms, which is the bedroom count of 5 multiplied by 2, which is 10. So they are already 1 room over, which we would have approved with a deed restriction to go from 10 to 11. And I believe we almost always, if not always in my experience, turn down a 12th room because it's the 11th that gets the deed restriction, not the 12th. And then these drawings clearly show that they're looking to make it a 6-bedroom house, because that's a bedroom, office guest room with what appears to be a closet plus a bathroom. So I think that's the precedent in that we would turn that down.
So there's no closet in that room. It's just an office room, which, yeah, it shows it as a bedroom, but it doesn't have a closet there.
A closet doesn't define a bedroom.
Through the chair, if I may.
Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Mr. Daigle, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Title V states room count divided by 2, rounded down, is the capacity for your septic system? So 11 rooms is actually Title V.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Yeah. So Dr. Wason, I think the 12 would be our max.
And that room does meet the requirements of Title V to be considered a bedroom.
Correct. That's
All right,
the removal of the wall.
The chair has a few questions. So one, we're at 11. The basement currently is unfinished, so it does not count against our room count. Mr. Baker is correct that it is total number of rooms divided by 2 and round down if you need to. So at 11, that would round down to 5. It's in compliance. At room 12, it would continue. It would be 6 rooms. It would be 1 over, and theoretically would need a deed restriction. This space, Jim is saying it is 3 rooms. However, even if it was 2, that is bringing us up to 13 rooms. However, I've got a bit of a concern with the office/guest room. It is listed as guest and it has a picture of a bed on the plan. I've got a concern with, I'm not sure how you unring that bell as far as your intended use of that space. That is a 6th bedroom. That is pretty clearly a 6th bedroom in this plan, which is out of compliance with the size of your septic system. And I'm not sure how the board, this isn't a room count issue. This is a bedroom count issue. This is, forget dividing by 2. This makes this a 6-bedroom house for a system that's designed for 5. I'm not sure we really have any grounds to be able to waive that under the current circumstances. That is clearly a bedroom and that clearly is the intent. I'm not sure how we as a board can work around that.
So if we remove the wall there, then obviously it can be any room. It can be used as an office room or a guest room. So removing the wall will make sure we are in compliance. The wall between media area and the room.
Well, we can't really legislate intent, but it's that, are you changing the use of that space to go from a guest room with a bed to something else?
Yes, we can change that use to an office or a library.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure the rest of the board. I'm a little bit
Or
confused.
we could get rid of the walls between, we could just turn the whole space into an unfinished storage space.
Through the chair.
Mr. Baker, go ahead.
I'm curious, what is the total square footage of the finished space after renovation?
Yeah, give me a few minutes and I'll figure that out.
While she's working on that, I guess I do have a question, just maybe for the board's discussion. I'm a little concerned with the plan coming before us, with what are clearly 6 bedrooms with a 5 bedroom septic system, a known 5 bedroom septic system. I'm a little bit concerned from a process piece how this even ever got to as far as the board, because this is nothing. We cannot act on this. This is in violation. This isn't a room count. This is not something we can go, yeah, you can have 6 bedrooms on a 5 system. I'm from on our side process how this got here. And I will be honest, I'm a little bit curious from an engineering perspective, how an engineer drew up a plan, knowing that you've got 6 bedrooms on a 5 bedroom system, that would even be proposed. I guess I'm a little bit concerned from a pre-health department perspective, how this ever even was designed without a plan beyond a deed restriction. So we'll start with the engineering side. Sarah, other than deed restriction, did you have any other thoughts of how a 6-bedroom house was going to function with a 5-bedroom septic system?
No, they were not planning to increase the number of people staying in the house.
But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a 6-bedroom
Okay.
house with a 5-bedroom septic system.
No.
Because that is clearly a bed and a bedroom. So I guess that's my question of, as the architect designing a 6-bedroom house with a 5-bedroom septic system, I'm curious what the thought process was that brought this forward.
The thought process was that the number of rooms in continual use in the house as bedrooms was not going to change.
I'm not positive. We don't have Jim here. I'm gonna refer to Francis as well as, but I'm not sure if I have a 5-bedroom house and I have just my partner and I living in it versus having 15 people living in my 5-bedroom house. I don't really think we think of the number of people living in the house. It really is based on design and system design. So I'm not
The
quite
system
sure.
design, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
The system design is based on 2 people occupying each bedroom. So a 5-bedroom house would be designed for a 10-person occupancy. That's my understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, Francis,
I
does
think-
bedroom count have anything to do with this?
Yes, it meets the definition regardless. There is a picture of a bed. And we also have to consider that they might not live there forever, so the next person moving in could make that a bedroom. So,
I did see a number of hands up. I'm going to refer back to the board. I think I saw Kevin Baker's first. Kevin, did you have something?
No, actually, Francis answered the question for me.
Okay.
If you're still
Dr. Wason. Dr. Wason, and then we'll go back to Lord.
This is also one of those that I know we often look at a basement and we say, oh, well, it could be multiple areas if you knock down a wall. I've pushed back on that before. And I think in this case, this is one of those properties that I feel you really have to look at differently, because at the south, I assume kind of from the drawing, south end of the drawing, is that a door or a window that has a double opening?
It is a door. It is a walkout.
Okay, so this is a walkout basement, and whether there are walls or not, I see it as a 3-room walkout basement, because you've designated spaces, and in the spirit of how we look at rooms, that's how we would look at this on a main floor of a house. And so I feel like when it becomes this walkout, again, this is nothing to do with the current owners and the current design plan, but as a future owner or a future agent putting this on the market, this is really close to an in-law suite in my book, because you have a bedroom, a bathroom, and what appears to be at least a wet bar. And so I would really caution the board that even if we say, well, knock down the wall and take out the word guest and don't put a bed on the drawing, I think this is still should be looked at as a multi-room design of this basement.
Do we have any other comment? Excuse me, Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Thank you. To the architect, through the chair, did you come up with that total square footage?
Yes, I'm sorry. I believe it's 1,296.
That's big. So we had spoken about as a board, and this is just for our internal conversations here, and we're having this conversation, so I'm going to bring it up one more time. I think it's really important for us to set some parameters when we're faced with a situation like this, as far as the definition of the size of a room, and if something is being designed or built or created that is in excess of X amount of square feet, it should be considered 2 rooms. We've talked about this before on a couple different occasions, and it's sort of slipped through the cracks, fell off our radar. But I'd love to schedule something on our next agenda to talk about language that we could all get behind, to call out, over X amount of square feet should constitute 2 rooms, because we often deal with this room count situation. And, obviously, if we take a wall down, we could call it 1 room, but really it's 4. because it's, 4 times 300 square feet. So we need to really get a definition on that as a board. And I think that would help us identify delineate some of the gray area that we're faced with.
I agree with that sentiment, and the fact that it's like, I think going back, Kevin, to your point, it should be like some number divided into the finished square feet to give you the number of rooms that's there, because this is almost the size of a house for some people. It's on this one floor, so. I think we also ought to look at language when we're looking at new houses that go back to something that was in the 2000s, the early 2000s, where based off the number of square footage of the house, they added rooms to the septic design of a new house. So that way we don't get into these continuous problems that we're having, which is, everybody comes to us looking for deed restrictions and overrides and all this stuff. They just designed the house from when it was built to be, as an example, my septic system in my house is a 6-room septic design. So, and I only have 4 bedrooms. So, we need to start thinking about that as well, having some realistic things so people don't, so it prevents us from having work, when the homes are designed right, and we don't have people in the town upset that they can't finish their basements or do things in their houses. So just some thoughts.
Kevin, I think that's a nice segue to the question that I have. So what are the options for the owner if they want to increase the living space when their kids are growing and need more space?
You can go put in a
I
whole
mean-
new septic system to increase the number of bedrooms in your septic system.
The question is more than bedrooms. We want some, like you can see the media area, the game area.
I understand what you're saying. We're working with the design of a house, and you've heard the chairman talk about it. And in my opinion, you clearly have another bedroom that's down there. It's just not going to work.
Okay, so if I remove the bedroom, will it work? How do I?
You're
So again, I'm going back to my original question. My kids are growing. I need some extra space for them. They need that space. What are my options?
So I see Mr. Baker's here. I'm gonna go to him and then we'll go from there. Mr. Baker.
One option would be to combine 2 of the bedrooms that are upstairs, make them 1. And to, present a plan for this finished playroom that's less like an accessory dwelling or an in-law apartment, and more like a playroom for the kids that are, is limited on square footage. We've tossed around some numbers here, 300 square foot a room. We haven't landed on anything. Perhaps your architect could make some suggestions now that you've heard what the board thinks, to come back to us with a plan that might be a better fit given the current circumstances.
And then you heard what I said, is you could always redesign your septic system, which is very costly.
Or maybe there's the opportunity to add a leach line.
It was
Add
not
a what?
necessarily, it's not always necessarily an entire new system. It is sometimes possible to increase the size of leaching field if that's the design of the system, which is expensive but less costly than an entire new system. But that also may be an option. I think, I'm not sure what the will of the board is, but I think at the moment, we'll see what the board says. I think I don't think this plan is quite there for us to approve, but that's my opinion. We'll see what the board's will is.
Can I just ask a quick point of clarification?
Of course.
So if we took this off and tried to redesign it, are we saying that we would be able to finish this basement, but it would have to be 1 single room, probably looking at that 300 square feet per room guideline of, just maybe 500, since I think we're limited to one additional room with the deed restriction. So maybe a 500 square foot finished space. would that be something that might be allowed?
Mr. Baker?
Through the chair, to the architect, I think that would be a lot closer than what is presented in front of us right now. And I'm of the mind to make a motion to continue. So you might be able to chat with our health director as well, and even our health agent, Mr. Gariffi. Could maybe give you some guidance on what to come back with. But I think you've heard all of our comments and our concerns here tonight, and so motion to continue.
I
And
second
motion
that.
to continue. And a second, we're gonna roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
and the chair votes yes. We're gonna continue our hearing on 6 Porter. Our next regularly scheduled meeting should be in 2 weeks. Give me one moment to pull up the date. I apologize. Is 2 weeks enough time, or would you like additional time to be able to rework the plan and work with our agent?
I think I would like a little additional time.
That's perfectly reasonable. I just wanted to double check. So our next meeting after that would be Wednesday, July 10th. That gives you
Okay.
just under a month. Is that acceptable? Would you like to go to the 24th?
Can we find something in
Or-
August?
August? Yep.
Or would you like to have it? I hate leaving an open continue, but would you like to leave an open continue? I just want to make sure we don't want to have you come back and not have what you need to have done. And make a request to just reopen the hearing when you are ready to reopen it. Our August meetings are the 14th and 28th. So I'm gonna
I could do the 28th.
28th. For the Chimichurri, it was 28th of August. Work for you?
Dara? Or do we want to make it an open continue?
28th should work, right, Sarah?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a motion to continue. It's been moved and seconded and voted on. We're going to be continuing the hearing for 6 Porter Road to August 28th, 2024.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We look forward to seeing you come back with a reworked plan.
Thank you.
All right. We are obviously a little past time for our 7:10 hearing for 70 Goldsmith for a request of variance for local upgrade approval. Speaking on behalf of 70 Goldsmith, I believe I have Evan Carloni. Let me promote you. Brenda, I see you have your hand up. Did you need us?
No, sorry.
No. Okay, just making sure.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Would you like me to screen share?
I was going to say, if you can share your screen for the project and tell us a little bit about what's going on and what you're requesting, and then we'll
Great.
open it up to our agents and the board for any discussions.
I will do that. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay?
We can.
Great. So this is a replacement septic system for 70 well, there's the first thing. 70 Goldsmith Street, not 70 George Street. 70 Goldsmith Street. It's an existing 4-bedroom system that's in failure. This area is, I'm sure you're familiar, is very high groundwater. So I believe most of them that come up in this area end up failing due to that. What we've got proposed here today is a geomat system. The geomat was chosen because after discussions with Jim in the field, we know there's quite a few raised systems in the area, and there's been some issues, he has said, with basements flooding from increased runoff from these mounded systems. So we figured go with Geomat, do the best we can on this one, and it is still mounded, but it's better. It's better than other system types. So that was a thought process behind going with the Geomat. But there are some local upgrade approvals and a request to utilize the 2-foot groundwater offset via the DEP approval letter for remedial use. The local upgrade approvals are approval of the use of a sieve analysis because it was too wet for us to be able to run a percolation test when we were on site. And then, excuse me. And then also the next local upgrade approval is the reduction from the offset from the inverts of the tank to the estimated high groundwater table. Required by Title V is 12 inches. We should be right around 6 to 7 inches. We are proposing monolithic tanks with H20 tops for buoyancy purposes. So we feel that the not just H20, but the monolithic side of things does help protect these tanks. And we will be planning to do all of the sealing at the joints and the boots to make sure that we don't have any issues. So those are the requests. There's 3 of them, the 2 local upgrades and the request to utilize the 2-foot offset via the approval letter.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I'm going to read our notes from Jim Gareffi, and then I'll open it up to Mr. Dangle, and we'll open up to the board. So for 70 Goldsmith Street, the sewer disposal system for this property has failed a Title V inspection. Soil testing was conducted, and the results showed the groundwater table to be high, 24 to 32 inches below grade, and the soil was too wet to conduct a perk test. A sieve analysis was performed to obtain a perk rate. This lot presents the following challenges to the replacement of the sewage disposal system: high groundwater table, a high perk rate, and a small lot size. Applicant is proposing to install a new septic tank, pump chamber, and a geomat leaching area. In order to minimize surface runoff onto abutting lots, the applicant is requesting the board's approval of a 2-foot groundwater reduction for the leaching area allowed by DEP by their approval of the geomat system. In addition, because of the high groundwater table found during testing, the applicant was requesting a local upgrade approval to allow a reduction of the groundwater offset for the tank outlet and inlet inverts to the high groundwater table. 12 inches required. It looks like about 7 inches provided in the plan. The use of sieve analysis requires a local upgrade approval to Title V. The site is small. The grade of the slope slight to the abutter behind the house. The reduction of the groundwater offset for the leaching area will help minimize the surface grading and potential for surface runoff to the abutters. I believe this design represents a reasonable approach to replace the failed system. Given the high groundwater table, I would recommend the use of a monolithic tank equipped with cast-in rubber boots on the inlet and outlet inverts of the tank. Mr. Daigle, any additional notes, comments for 70 Goldsmith?
No, I'd just be curious if the abutter's here.
Okay, we're going to start with the board. We'll open up 20 abutters, and we'll work from there. So, again, we'll start alphabetical order. Mr. Baker.
I have no questions. I think you did a great job fitting the system in on the small parcel and did the best you could. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Davis. On mute, Kevin.
Sorry. I don't see the request for the variances on the plans. I know we had discussions about that some times ago. We like to see those on the plans. I don't see them there unless somebody can correct my eyeballs. I don't see that anywhere on the plan.
I just zoomed in. The local upgrade approvals are in the sidebar listed here, and then the 2-foot reduction is listed.
Where?
Can you see my screen?
Oh, I see him. Okay, I got it.
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
My fault. The other thing is, obviously, there's a typo. Instead of 70 George, it's 70 Goldsmith, so we need to get that corrected. And then the other thing, I thought we had an offset to groundwater as one of the things that we passed not long ago. I thought it needed to be, if it was less than a certain amount, it needed to be kind of like another local approval, if I remember correctly, Mr. Chairman. He's saying he's within the 2-foot boundary. I thought we had another thing that they needed to do. If it was like, oh, I remember now.
I think only if that's just within 50
wetlands.
feet of wetlands.
Yeah. And there doesn't appear to be wetlands. So I guess that's my question is, where are we in danger of any wetlands around the area, or are we good to go?
No wetlands nearby.
Okay.
No. Yep.
Those are my comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Davis. Dr. Wason.
Nothing for me. Looks good.
All right, and the chair has no questions. I'm going to open up to abutters. We have a few folks in the audience. If you're in a butter and have a question or a comment, or not in a butter and have a question or a comment, if you could just raise your hand for us, so we know you would like to speak on 70 Goldsmith. I am seeing no hands in our audience. So what is the will of the board for 70 Goldsmith? Mr. Baker.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the design as presented and grant the variance for the inlet, grant the approval of the around 6-inch separation from the inlet and outlet inverts of the septic tank and pump chamber to high groundwater, as well as allow the sieve analysis in place of a percolation test.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. You said 2-foot offset as well, right, Kevin?
And no, I did not. And also allow the 2-foot groundwater offset. Thank you.
No problem. So I have a motion. Do I still have that second with that amendment?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker.
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
The chair votes yes. You're all set. If
Thank
you
you.
make sure you submit the corrected plans to the office, that would be helpful before you move too much further along.
Perfect. Will do. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. All right, this brings us to our 7:15 discussion around the Board of Health regulations for private wells. I'm going to, if I can, accept Mr. Baker. I know you've kind of taken a lot of the point on this project. Can I hand off to you for the moment?
Sure thing. Yeah, I can walk through this. I know Francis worked a lot on this too, as he came on board, and this was one of our priorities. So I know he's got some insight on some of the things that we've done here. I know that the agricultural irrigation well language was put in there. Francis, do you want to speak to that?
So we actually got an additional comment from one of the board members suggesting that maybe we take out irrigation and just do agricultural well, because we do have irrigation well further down and it might be confusing. This is the best definition I could find for the most part. I used the model water quality guidelines to find definitions and to understand the changes that I put in. So that was the biggest guide in terms of the changes that you see.
Francis, well, we're not seeing your screen, and the packet we have has notes from Mr. Kroback, but I'm not really seeing it. I see a few of your notes in it, but I don't think this is I'm not sure if this does not look like our most recent, but perhaps we kind of started from scratch again. But this looks like
I've added some more notes since the packet came out. So is it important that the packet is exactly what we're talking about, or because we're a working document, this is a discussion? are we at the point where we can put it up on screen and go through and
I'm just
finalize
asking-
the languages?
I was gonna say, because the packet has the 1989 version, it does not have the current model version. So the notes that are here are on the now 35-year-old version, not the version that came out a few years ago, which is what we were talking about. So I just want to make sure we're all working from the same playbook here, because the packet has notes on a version that's 35 years old, and that's the whole reason why we brought this discussion up, was so that we could work on the the new current model regulations.
Do you want me to pull up my screen with the shared version?
I mean, I would like to see electronic, because the packet doesn't show that the pre and post changes either. So
Right. Well, and it's the old version anyway. It's not even the current. It's not even the model regulation. This is the previous version. So this isn't even this isn't the playbook we're even editing.
it is. I think that date just wasn't updated, but I think that's the working document.
Yeah, Francis, if you can share yours, then that would be great.
Okay.
And I would actually, if we're, whenever we share it, remove the word irrigation off the agricultural well. I have a problem because it says related to farming, but not for irrigating lands or crops. Well, if it's an agricultural well and we're not watering crops, huh? That one definitely kind of like makes me scratch my head.
Can you see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay.
So, like I said, an agricultural well that's not used for irrigating crops,
Mm-hmm.
that
Rearing animals counts as agriculture.
excuse me?
Raising animals can count under agriculture umbrella.
I understand that, but but it says agricultural well, a non-potable well used for watering, blah 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 blah, or for other purposes related to farming, but not for irrigating lands or crops. So take out the irrigating lands and says related to farming, but not for crops. So if you're not doing something in agriculture, which I understand, there's animal agriculture, there's land, there's crop agriculture. I get it. All right. You can't be watering crops, but you're using it for agriculture. Okay. That doesn't make sense to me.
Unless we have two definitions. We have an irrigation well definition, and we have an agricultural well definition. Now that well may be used for both. One well may be used for both purposes, and then it needs to meet both criteria. But Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Through the chair. I was just hoping that we could clarify that definition on the agricultural irrigation well, and just so that it's separate from the irrigation well, and call out, how an irrigation well in this definition, how we're looking at it, should be for watering grass, not crops. And then the agricultural irrigation well should be for irrigating land and watering crops.
So that's great, and I appreciate that clarification, Kevin. But the other thing, if you go back down to irrigation well, you're going to hit another pet peeve of mine. A well used for the sole purpose of irrigation. Yeah, wait, no.
Yeah, right. You use the definition right in the thing there, didn't you?
You can't do that.
Watering lawns, I think is
No,
what
I-
what we're getting at for the irrigation well.
I understand what you get. I understand what we're getting at. But if we're looking at what's in the document,
We need to change the words.
words matter.
Yeah. That works.
Do we have a definition from another document? And I'm sorry if I'm talking over someone. I apologize, Mr. Wason.
I don't feel we're ready to review it if there are comments that still haven't been entered. So I guess I would like, I hope we can use the time efficiently. And if there are things like this that we need to call it, because there was no note really on this one other than what I was bringing up. I agree, it's confusing between the two. So, but do we have enough, or should we spend our time on this discussion? I guess that's just what I'm sensitive to. Because however we change the first one here, we definitely have to change this one, because I don't think this one should just say watering. I think we should actually call out that it is not for agricultural purposes if we want to draw that distinction. So I think you got to decide, either have an agricultural bucket, which covers all agriculture, or you have an agricultural non-irrigation bucket and an irrigation bucket. And it is confusing. But do we have enough notes in here that we're ready to hammer it out?
I think we are. I think we haven't gone through it all as a board at this
Okay.
point. So that's what this is for. And then maybe
And-
if we just change the word watering to well used for the sole purpose of watering grass and not for agricultural purposes. Something to that effect.
Okay, then I would ask, if we're ready for it, can we scroll back up and go to the very first comments and changes? Because we jumped right to agricultural irrigation well, and I just want to make sure that we are reviewing all, because all these blue underlines are suggestions or additions that one of us or somebody else has written.
No, I like the idea. I agree. We should start at the top and work through. And if we need to pause or take a break, come back to it, then we come back. But we know we left off. We're not jumping around any more than we need to.
That's cool. Do we also want to time box this as well? So a certain amount of time, like 15, 20 minutes or whatever it is. And then we get through what we get through, and we keep talking about the document as we move through it. Does that make sense?
That works for me. I see lots of heads nodding. So I think we have consensus from the board. So I have, my clock says 10 minutes of 8, do 5 after 8, and we will move on to our next item on the agenda, if that works for everyone.
Because it is just a discussion.
All right, so let's start at the top. Dr. Wason, go ahead.
No, I'm saying there are changes above this. This isn't the first
That's what I was
change.
just saying. Let's start at the top. If we can scroll to the top. This is not my screen. I think Francis has control of the screen for the share. All right, so what I see here is all the intro stuff for the model regulation, so that obviously does not need to be part of our local regulation. So I think that all is reasonable to come out.
Well, before you go too far scrolling there, we already had a comment on the date, I think. October 30th, 1989. I understand you see the revised. So
I'm gonna say that should be the
Typically-
state's revised date. That's the state's revised date. So yes, obviously when we implement it, it would be whatever our implementation date is for the revision.
looks, yeah, keep going.
So I know it's silly, but there's the first one. It's, Littleton Board of Health.
Yep.
So obviously nobody's going to argue with it. Can we?
I'll accept that one.
Yeah, accept that.
Yep,
Accept that
good.
right now,
Yeah.
and
yeah,
we'll get in the document and accept it, so none of us have to glance at that one ever again.
yeah, okay. One year.
So, did you accept that one, Francis?
Individually?
Can you? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, click on it.
You'd be able to.
Just click on the word Littleton, yeah. And I believe you can accept with a little checkbox right there.
Oh, sweet.
Bam.
Okay.
So under abandoned water well, I changed that from 3 years to 1 year because it was changed somewhere else in the document to 1 year. Or somebody did. Oh, sorry, I changed another one. So somebody changed this health. Side note, if you're logging into OneDrive as health, we then don't know who the record came from. So you're being sneaky, but then we can't ask you about your change. So this was changed from 3 years to 1 year. Can somebody speak to that? Or are we just okay with it? Or
I believe Jim and I talked about that way back when, and that was one of the changes that we had made together to bring in front of the board.
I like it.
I think
Makes
so,
sense.
too. Jim likes it. I would vote to accept that.
So agricultural versus irrigation. I realize we're not to irrigation yet, but I think they are kind of connected. My question is for both of these. I know these came out of the model regs for I try to take it back. I have the pure model regs on my other screen. I don't see agricultural well on the definition list in the model regs, only irrigation. I guess my question
That's
is
correct. Yeah.
So I own a farm. Hypothetically, I own a farm and I have goats and chickens and cows, and I also grow tomatoes. By our definitions here, I would need two different wells. I need one well to water my tomatoes and a whole separate well to water my cows. Because that's what it's saying is that
I would interpret it as your well, if you have one well, you are now meeting two definitions with that well, and therefore you're going to be held to the higher standard. Kevin Davis is shaking.
I'm asking. That's why part of why I'm asking the question, because an agricultural well is for this, not that, and an irrigation well is for that, not this. So I guess I'm just not sure. That would create some confusion for me reading this of going, can one well serve both functions when the definition of each says you can't be the other? I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I guess I'm having a concern if I put a well in for my 2-acre farm for my cows, my horses, and my tomatoes. Do I really need to put in two because of a definition? I'm just not sure. Mr. Baker, did you have more insight of why this was added or how?
I know Jim called out that we would want to define what an agricultural irrigation well is, because it's a different animal than the, call it a residential irrigation well. The animal thing was not no pun intended. And I think that if we change some of the verbiage in this definition to not contradict itself, that we could go with the agricultural well. But of course, it would have to be used for irrigating crops. So I would just say, for other purposes related to farming.
So, if I may, so I actually am using a little technology, and I went out to our lovely Chat GPT. I understand it's a little controversial, but it's a way of at least crowdsourcing a definition, because I've went to a whole bunch of different places and looked for definitions, and I know maybe Francis or someone else can come up with a more authoritative DPH sort of kind of source. But I will put some things into here as far as that goes. The Chat GPT actually, the Venn diagram is very overlapped, shall we say, between the two definitions of an irrigation well and an agricultural well. So I think what we want to do is say something like irrigating for crops or something like that, or take out the word irrigation and just say for crop use, blah, 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 blah. I also don't like the putting a list together because we're going to forget something. And did we ever get any feedback from our agricultural committee? You've got to be kidding me. Okay. All right.
I think they've been really busy with the orchard situation. And
I understand.
we should put this back in front of them after our meeting tonight, and we have a better once we can all agree on what we want to put in there, put it in front of them.
Roger that. So again, so for me, it's a non-potable well used for watering livestock, crops, or
Purposes related to farming.
yeah, purposes related to farming. Again, we can't have the word agriculture and agriculture in the definition. That's the reason I'm like rolling in my brain because,
It says aquaculture.
Does it say aquaculture? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It does say aquaculture. That's fine. Aquaculture is fine. Because that's a different thing.
So let's it sounds like we want to pull out the household yards and gardens and use it for crops, lands and gardens, and then lose the
Non-potable.
not related to irrigating lands or crops, because again, it's a contradiction within the definition.
Yep.
And then
Delete that,
I think my
hit
only
delete
other
there.
question would be agriculture. Basically, the difference then is going to be between agriculture and irrigation. Agriculture is for ground and animals. Irrigation is only for ground. And
Irrigation.
do we have a really good reason for that?
Irrigation is things not used on a farm. So that would be household lawns, that would be household flowers, but not household food gardens and things like that. Because food gardens, I don't know.
Okay, so Dr. Waste, I see you gave me 1 second. I just have one kind of follow up. So we are right to farm community. Anybody, if they choose to grow vegetables in the yard, can consider themselves a farm. How do we decide what's an irrigation in my backyard tomatoes versus what's irrigation in my backyard tomato farm? And does it really? I'm not sure. We have to look a little bit closer at the definite. Does it really matter? I don't know. Dr. Waste, go ahead.
That's my point. Is I would back into some of these definitions based upon the criteria by which we're trying to say something. So does an agricultural well for animal purposes have some sort of different requirement than an agricultural well for irrigation of crops?
So I think what we want to do is, I think backing into it, I think you're right, if I may. It gets into like, how often are you going to test one versus the other? Is that type of thing. I think that's where you're starting to split hairs as to where we're going to need to have, the safety of the public in mind as far as testing goes, and then is remediation.
So in my mind, if I continue that, what I would say is I would try to lump, even if animals and crops had some differences in testing requirements, I personally would push agricultural, thinking that is that more commercial agricultural? Is right, because Danny said right to farm. So if I'm using my private well in my backyard to water my tomatoes that I'm going to eat in my house, you maybe have recommendations for what I should be testing, because that's how you're saying I should handle my potable water as well. But is the line we're crossing that we're now doing agricultural for business reasons? And in that case, I would feel like then agricultural well should have its own bucket, and irrigation is about using our own private home water systems. And again, agricultural still might have some subcategories of requirements for, oh, if you're dealing with livestock, you should do this, or if you're watering crops, you'll have to do this. That's kind of what I'm feeling.
So it sounds like what we need to do is, as we move through other parts, keep agricultural and irrigation in the back of our mind to see if we want to figure stuff out, like come up, like you said, back into the definition as we move forward.
I've looked through the other pieces of the model regulations. I'm not seeing any difference of regulation application to non-potable water. A well is a well. So I guess we're identifying two different things that are supposed to be different, have different definitions because they are different things, but we're not treating anything differently, and we're not. So I guess we're not assessing them or inspecting them or anything else differently. So I'm back to, I'm not sure why we need two definitions if we're not treating them differently and the applications are similar. Whether it's
the request was that we would treat them differently, because they didn't want to be seen as a potable water source for every usage. Therefore, it should have some different requirements. But I agree, Dan, those changes in language might not be present later on, but that was the reason to call out agriculture and irrigation, so that it wasn't just one definition of a potable water well that has to meet all this.
No. I recognize that. No, I'm not even talking about potable, drinkable water. I'm talking about our farming, outdoor water, for lack of a better phrase. Agricultural and irrigation, operationally, I don't think we actually are having a different approach to what we do with them or how we deal with them. They're considered non-potable outdoor water. So I guess we have two definitions for different purposes, but we're not treating them differently. They're basically a non-potable well. Mr. Davis.
So agricultural wells, as I've been schooled by a couple of our farmers in town, also go through other testing for safe crops and things like that they have to submit for their certification in the state. Hence, what I was trying to do after some of that education from some of our local farmers was to basically call out the testing required for an agricultural well to meet but not exceed those requirements as outlined by, and we can get the language for what section it is for the, the crop, what the language is for meeting for crops and things like that. That's kind of where this was going. So that way our farmers that have agricultural wells that are used to produce food are not going to have to go through additional testing above and beyond what they do, what is deemed necessary for farmers to do, to produce appropriate, food that's high quality, blah, 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 blah. Right. That's where this was going. That's where I wanted this discussion to kind of go off to. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, Kevin, but we added the definition and none of that other language you just described.
I understand.
So we're not. So this is not that ready. So that piece we have to create that piece. That's what I'm getting at. Like, right, Dan recognized, like, if we're going to define an irrigation well, then I'm assuming that's because we have some bullet somewhere that says, oh, well, if it's an irrigation well, you can do this instead. So the same thing for this agricultural. We'll create this agricultural well definition. We need to get that agricultural call out built in.
Absolutely. And that's my intent, is to get that agricultural well language down farther.
Okay. I was gonna say thank you, Francis. We're gonna add. Can we add that language in just so we know what the goal was as we move forward? Language for requirements. So yeah, we really want to figure out what even if that language is a citation to the Mass Department of Agriculture, or whatever the accrediting body is for farms, if there's a water testing standard for them, if we can just reference their standard, then we've set up for commercial operating farms, an agricultural well is for these purposes for commercial operations, and water will be tested and meet the requirements under, CMR, whatever the regulation is for water testing, and the documentation will be provided to the Board of Health on, whatever the frequency that they require testing, just submit it to us as well. But I think that's kind of where you're going. You want to make sure, so we're not adding additional burdens other than perhaps providing the documentation you provided the state. You've got it already, send us a copy. So, that's not overly burdensome. So that piece for a commercial operation I think is where we want to go. So I think that's kind of the note we want to make, is this: we want to make sure we get that reference, and because it's perfectly reasonable for us to cite a state standard as a regulation. And if the state changes the standard, our regulation is already in compliance with that change. We don't have to update our regulation because it's already matched the state standard. All right, and then for an irrigation well, we're talking about non-commercial, so we'd have to add that language into a non-commercial. An irrigation well is considered for non-commercial, non-potable water for household, outdoor use, or some language, and then whatever requirements that we would require. I know for the model regulations, what's 5, 6, 7, 8, section 10 has an irrigation well requirement. So, all right, so I think we got our rationale for that definition addition and how those two things are different in our perspective, and how we'll operationalize that difference for the board and for the public. All right, I will let you know we are now at 8:07, and we've managed to get through agricultural and irrigation wells. Ish. What is the will of the board at this time? Would we like to continue, or would we like to do we want to see if we can get through at least the definition section, or do we want to pause this and move on to other items?
Why don't we give it 10 more minutes? Let's try and get through as much as we can.
All right, I'm okay with that. Can I have some I've got some head nods. All right, so we're gonna go
Scroll
to
faster.
8:15, 8:17 or so, but let's see if we can at least get through definitions, because we are at I apologize, I'm scrolling up on my other screen. So we left off officially at agricultural wells. So if we can scroll back up to agricultural wells, and then we can work down from there, just make sure we don't miss anything else. All right, agricultural wells. The dashes just like formatting pieces. So if we slowly scroll down to the next one. If anybody has anything, speak up. All right, we can probably accept that change of insert name of municipality to Littleton, as long as everyone agrees.
Keep going.
And we'll clean up the style to make sure it matches. It's italicized, but that'll be a final cleanup. That doesn't need to happen at the moment. That gets us down to closed loop geothermal wells. A well that uses a closed loop fluid system to prevent the discharge or escape of its fluid into the subsurface. Closed loop heat pump wells shall not be used to produce water.
So
It's an awkwardly worded phrase. I'm not sure if that came from a standard definition someplace, or if that was built by us. It just seems like an oddly worded.
I think it should read, shall not be used as potable water source.
I disagree. A closed loop implies no connection to any water source, whether it be irrigation or potable or anything else.
yeah, but we
Okay,
want to
so-
make sure that we want to make sure that we define that. We
So
want to make
closed
sure
loop not to be connected to any other water source.
Do we need any kind of a functional definition? A closed loop fluid system used for heating and or cooling with no connection to potable water systems?
Closed loop heat pump wells shall not be connected to any other water source.
Water system.
We need
Water
to keep
source.
we need to keep we have two definitions going on there right now. We have the closed loop geothermal well, a well that is used, it uses a closed loop fluid system to prevent the discharge or escape of fluids into the subsurface during the heating or cooling of a
Structure.
structure, right? A closed loop, we can't say heat pump, a closed loop geothermal well shall not be used to produce water.
I'm not sure what our style is, and I'd have to read through again. Closed loop heat well shall not be used to produce water. Does not sound like a definition. It sounds like a regulation. It's not describing the thing. It is telling us what you can do with that thing.
Fair enough.
I'm not sure if I'm overreading that.
No, that's a good point.
That's a great point. No, that's a great point.
No, but doesn't closed loop imply that there's no connection to it?
No.
I would agree. Yeah, I agree from that piece, but I just want to make sure making sure our styles are consistent.
Kevin,
but I agree that
how can you have a closed loop if you then have a connection and you're pulling water out? Aren't you jumping to an open loop?
So a closed loop system, when you go do a geothermal, you've got a closed loop pipe that goes down into the water or into the soil to basically do that heat exchange on that water system that's in there. What you don't want to do then is to then, even though you have a closed loop system, and I agree with whoever said that this is now becoming a thing that you should or should not do. Basically, then you take the water that's there and pump the water out that you used as a thermal exchange to go use that for something else.
Right. Okay.
So you don't, what we want to say is a geothermal well that is, closed loop that does this. This is what this is, blah, blah, blah. That second sentence, the closed loop geothermal well shall not be used to produce potable water, is a policy, a law.
Yeah. So get rid of that, and now it has to go down later to say that your well cannot be within X feet of a geothermal well.
I'm not. No. Your geothermal well can't be used to produce potable water is the correct statement.
Okay. So, but you're right. It's a regulation, so it doesn't belong here. So
Correct.
that comes out.
Yep. But we need to have that in a lower section. So whoever's controlling the editing, Francis or whatever, that closed loop geothermal well shall not be used to produce potable water is a requirement for, geothermal wells. Does that make sense, Francis?
Yep.
Okay. And that was another one of these Kevin Davis ads, because I've gotten feedback from several of my associates, friends, and people in town that if we start having that, specifically Stowe and Hudson did not exclude geothermal wells from their definition of a well, and they needed to have all of the same inspections and testing done to the well, even though it was never going to be used for potable water.
Yep, no, I think it's an appropriate inclusion to clarify what that means. So, no, I think that's appropriate. All right. Continuing down, let's see, we got irrigation well. Irrigation well.
So before you scroll further, because we're not going to talk about irrigation right now, we're now to the O's, and we need to define an open loop geothermal well if we've defined a closed loop geothermal well, because they're going to have slightly different requirements. So we're bringing it up. And Francis, I need you to verify the differences between those two, because it's my understanding that a closed loop does not dump anything into the ground that you could then pull up as well water. but an open does. So whatever it is, we need both of them defined here.
Closed loop is the radiator system in your car. It just circulates around. An open loop is the cooling system in a nuclear power plant where it dumps hot water out and brings cold water in from an open body of water.
That's my understanding. So I'm not sure how you could ever get well water out of a radiator because it's closed loop.
I understand, but you don't. So here's the problem with a closed loop system. If there is a leak, then and you don't know that it's leaking into the groundwater that's there, then you are consuming water out of a closed loop system that you should not be doing.
So we would need some kind of an offset between potable water wells and a geothermal well. Whatever, I don't know what that number is.
I think that's my hang up is that if the well itself is just a well and it's not a part of the definition of the closed loop, Kevin, is that if that's what you're getting at, then I understand that.
Yeah,
in my mind, it's like, well, once I put the well in as a part of my geothermal, that is a part of the closed loop. So that's why is the well pump sitting down there in the aquifer.
There is no well pump
loop or not.
There is no well pump in a closed loop system. You're using the water as your thermal exchange. And the piping that goes down into it has its own pump, and there's no movement of the water. You're pumping glycol essentially, or a salt solution is usually what they use, in through this closed loop, and you're using that as the heat exchanger, as Dan said, radiator, right? That's essentially what you're doing. And so the problem is that you don't want to consume any of that water for fear of it leaking.
But you can't consume that water unless you drop unless you drop an irrigation well or drinking well right next to it, right?
Or next, yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. That's why it becomes like is it an offset or a distance requirement? So that's where the regulation comes in. So what we want to call out is and the reason I'm sticking on this is because it's hard to even call it a geothermal well when it's a closed loop because it's just a loop that goes deep down in the ground and you're not touching that. It doesn't function.
So maybe what we call it is a geothermal well, and we state in there that this includes open and closed loop geothermal, blah blah blah, geothermal wells, because that's what they're called in the industry. That's called a geothermal well. And so if we have well regulations, we need to be clear.
But I assume the risk is higher with an open. Because like you said, a closed, it should be safe unless there's a problem and you get a leak. Okay? An open 100% you're dumping stuff into the ground. And so I think you need to be a little more attentive to the safety of an open system than a closed.
Well, an open system, you are also taking water from the ground, sucking it in, doing the heat exchange, and then returning. That's Dan's thing of a nuclear power plant. So you think the ocean as a very large heat sink.
I'm going to hold for 1 second. We do have a hand up in the audience. It just came up, so I'm going to allow you to talk from the audience, Mr. Kroback, if that's okay. Let's see if this works.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
There you go, sir. We can.
Right. I just wanted to chime in. I did leave a comment on this one. There is a definition in the Mass Private Well Guidelines of just that, what the previous gentleman was saying. Definition of a ground source heat pump well. And it defines what's an open loop, what's a closed loop, and all you really need to capture is just the definition. Later on in this document, you are talking about which type of ground source heat pump wells you will allow or not, and what regulations apply to them. So I just want to reiterate my suggestion to use the definition that's already there in the mass.gov private well guidelines.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, back off. I just did again another quick search on the model regulation. It actually spells out specifically that does not include address insulation of geothermal wells, and it really only talks about geothermal wells are considered private wells for the regulation. Now, whatever we choose to do beyond that is what we're working on right now.
Right. I was talking about that. There's a different document, mass.gov, private well guidelines. It's a state guidelines on what defines a private well.
Thank you, sir. Francis, you can just tie that to Mr. Crowback's note in the document for that external reference. We can bring that in.
Yep. That's fine. I'll know what it means.
Okay. All right, are we at P? Let's do a quick scroll and see if there's anything else we can at least get for definitions before we wrap this up, if that's okay with the group. Irrigation, we already kind of talked about. Private well. Editorial correction to inject, so it's not ground or inject. Thank you very much for that, whoever was. Rest of P's, I don't see anything, any comments so far. Obviously, anybody has anything, speak up. Let's continue scrolling through the P's. No comments. Definition of sand cement grout. We have under static water level AGR. I'm not sure if that's just a typo as someone was editing something. I will be honest, I'm a bit of an Oxford comma person, so there's lots of places where I would love to put in commas that aren't there, but we can work through that one as we get closer to the end. All right, I think that gets us through our definitions. Did anybody else have any comments on definitions beyond what we've already talked about to clarify those couple? Nothing. All right. We are at 8:23. We are beyond our 10-minute timeline, but we're so close to the end of definitions. I apologize. I did not stop us. I let us get to the end. Any comments, questions, suggestions? Should we stop where we are and continue with the rest of our meeting and come back to move on for our first item for private well rigs for our next one, and then obviously any edits to definitions prior to that? I'm going to take that in the affirmative.
Please.
So that moves us to our 7:20 hearing for, or excuse me, I apologize, not hearing, discussion around mobile food truck regulations. Before we get too started into this, I do want to thank Dr. Wason for bringing forward a question around a food truck here in town that it sounds like was approved, but not quite. And thank you, Francis, for doing the last minute rescue to make that happen for one of our smaller in-town communities for an event to make that happen. I think we just want to probably message to town administration in general that if you're not sure, which means if it's not within your direct scope, don't say things are okay unless you've talked to the folks who make sure things are okay. So thank you for Matt bringing that forward. Thank you, Francis, for jumping on that and making sure everything checked all the boxes appropriately before it occurred, but making sure that it happened. So we recognize last minute stuff is stressful sometimes, but thank you on my behalf for making that happen for that community here in town. So unless anybody has anything else, let's talk about some mobile food truck regulations.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Brenda.
I just want to know Gino is here.
All right. Hi, Gino.
Yeah, I'm thinking to make sure that we don't have no more Zoom.
Okay, we're gonna go on mute now.
So again, certainly it can sometimes be a challenge. If this is an ongoing issue, I think, certainly we can connect you with our IT department here in town to kind of walk through the process, and they can certainly are able to set up a Zoom event on the fly, so you can actually go through and actually log into a Zoom event and make sure it works. And certainly for anybody who's watching out there in the public, on LCTV, if you do want to connect to the meeting on Zoom and be able to participate more actively, and you have any challenges with that, please reach out to any of the members of the board, to Brenda or Francis in Town Hall, or talk to IT in Town Hall, and maybe can help you, direct you with how to get onto Zoom. It can be done on basically any computer or phone. It's pretty straightforward. So we want everybody who's able to participate and has an interest to participate. And certainly, Gino, we can work offline to make sure that the technology side of things is functioning for you, because we certainly miss you when you're not here. So we're glad you're here now with us.
And Gino, I can help you if you want to reach out after.
All right, so that brings us to mobile food truck regulation.
I thought we had gone through this, Mr. Chair.
I believe we did, but I'm not sure. I don't think we actually promulgated anything. Dr. Wason, go ahead.
So I was trying to look it up way back when we as a board seemed to finalize our food truck regulations, and we handed it off, I believe, to the select board because we had some concern about, well, we can approve the healthness of a food truck, but we are not in the business of approving where and when they should operate, as we felt law enforcement and zoning might have some weigh in on that. So I don't believe that regulation ever really got bounced back to us or was finalized. And I'll throw him on the spot because I think Francis has more recent information because he's talked to somebody about that and can explain why the ball is back in our court.
So it
Awesome.
was expressed to me that the select board did not want to be part of that regulation. So it's been tweaked, so it's Board of Health centric.
Okay, so yeah, I think I'm with Matt. Is that certainly we are for let's take it out of mobile and just make it food service establishment. That if I want to open a restaurant here in town, I need a business license. I need permission from the town, which would be from the select board, to have a restaurant and operate a business here in town. I would also need Board of Health permission to operate a restaurant in a clean, safe, sanitary, regulatorily compliant health perspective. So I really kind of need two permits. I need a business permit, and I need, to operate, and I need a Department of Health Board of Health permit saying that I'm operating it in a sanitary manner. So I think that is kind of where we came from, that our Board of Health regulations is around the sanitation. Are you clean? Are you sterile? Are you cold or hot? All those good things that boards of health and health departments look at. And where, when, hours, those kind of pieces would have to fall on some other body, because we can't really define where someone can go. That's beyond our scope to say this intersection is okay, that one isn't. This parking lot's cool, that one isn't. So I think from that perspective, I'm not sure. I would think I'd agree with Dr. Wason that it's a bit up to some other body, whether that's select board or zoning or someone else, to say what location is acceptable or not, or how long a location is acceptable. But I agree that's not really necessarily our scope. And what action other boards choose to take is up to other boards to take or not take. So if they are opting not to provide input into our regulation, I'm glad we gave them the opportunity. And then whatever regulation they want around non-sanitary, not non-sanitary, non-board of health purview aspects of business operations, then that is obviously in their court to do as they will. So that brings to us, what do we want to do? Were we happy with where we left off with our model regs? Tonight is only a discussion, so we can't take a vote to implement tonight, but I think we can at least look at it and go, are we in a good place? Then that means we can post the public hearing and the proposed regulation for discussion for our next meeting, and implement after appropriate posting in 30 days or whatever it is. So, comments, Dr. Wason.
I should have asked Francis to do this when he handed me a copy of this last week, but perhaps the thing to do would be to call out the changes, highlight the changes that have been made from the original, since we all agreed on the original, so hopefully we don't have to go line by line through the original. But if we could, that was for Kevin Davis's benefit right there. But if that way we could go, well, we all remember that one, we can read it again, but let's specifically focus on the things that you've added or tweaked since then. Would that make sense?
Sure.
Mr. Baker.
I was just going to ask, correct me if I'm wrong, Francis, but isn't the only thing that were adjusted were the enforcement section, as well as just that 100-foot buffer zone from the fixed location under the conditions of
I did add
operation?
more requirements into it as well. I can redline everything so the board will know exactly.
Yeah, I think I mean, on first read through of this, it all reads great, and I'm glad we have so many, so much to talk about with the food trucks. But it looks great.
So I'll redline it for the next meeting, and get it to you ahead of time. So.
All right. Great. Thank you, sir. All right. That gets us to our 7:25. Sorry, I have no hands in the audience. Our 7:25 discussion and vote around reorganization of the board. Just a reminder, our current officers are myself as chair, Matt Wason as vice chair, and I believe Gino is our clerk currently. So I'll open it up to discussion around reorganization of the board. Don't all jump at chair once. Mr. Baker, go ahead.
I had some thoughts around this, and I was thinking that since Dr. Wason has yet to have a chance to be the chair of the board, that I would nominate him to be the chair of the board.
I second that opportunity.
We have a motion and a second. Dr. Wason, do you accept the nomination?
I will.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker.
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni. Brenda, if Gino's with you, you're on mute.
My apologies.
Nope, that's okay.
I was on mute, so you have to vote again.
Okay, no problem. Gino say yes.
Thank you, sir. Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Congratulations, Dr. Wason. You are the new chair of the Littleton Board of Health. Would you like to continue the meeting from this point, or do you want me to finish up this item?
That seems awkward.
I was asking because,
you started the voting discussion along similar lines. I feel Kevin Davis has not had an opportunity to have chair or vice chair position. So I would like to nominate Kevin Davis for the vice chair position.
I will second that. Mr. Davis, do you accept?
I accept.
All right. Do you want me to call it, Matt?
Go ahead and wrap up this agenda. item.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker.
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratellone.
Jennifer, I say yes. I hope he's
Matt
gonna be
Wason.
a person.
Matt Wason, yes.
And the former chair votes yes. So congratulations, Mr. Davis, as our new vice chair. Yeah, the other organizational piece is for clerk.
I nominate Kevin Baker as clerk.
They have a nomination.
I'll second.
And second, do you accept Mr. Baker?
Gladly, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker.
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratellone.
Say it again. I'm sorry, you were on mute. Forgive me.
I say yes, but they stole my title.
Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
And Dan Kane votes yes. Congratulations, Mr. Baker, as our new clerk of Littleton Board of Health. All right, that concludes our reorganization of the Littleton Board of Health. At this point, it's my honor to hand the remainder of the meeting off to our new chair, Dr. Matt Wason.
Thank you very much, Dan. Next agenda item is the ID decision support tool, which is my responsibility. So I am not going to present the tool. The state of Massachusetts has disabled access to most of the data that I use to get that dashboard built. So I'm still trying to work on that to see if they'll open up that access again, but it is access denied right now. The one thing I will just verbally mention is that the mosquito-borne illnesses that we know and love, Triple E and West Nile virus, the reporting for that actually starts on June 17th. So while the mosquitoes are out there, we don't actually have any information on those diseases in our communities as of yet. So doesn't mean it can't be out there. So make sure you're putting on your mosquito repellent and making sure you don't have standing pools of water lying around your house and your patio, and be smart. Does anybody else have any input?
I only share under mosquito control. Certainly, there's lots of commercial agencies out there doing bug and tick and mosquito control. Central Massachusetts Mosquito Control Project is the Commonwealth's program, and they provide a great set of resources and will actually spray on private property as well if requested. So if someone has concerns and needs some either informational support or control support, Central Mass Mosquito Control is probably your first stop for some resources then from the public side of things. So, and they're available online, and they're very helpful and easy to work with. So, and I'm sure
we have
Francis is
a-
familiar with them. So if somebody has a question, they could probably talk to Brenda or Francis in the office, and they can help connect them as well. I'm volunteering you, Francis. Hope you don't mind.
I also built a webpage for their contact information and what they do, so people can look online as well.
Perfect.
Great. That brings us to our administrative matters. Shows meeting minutes approval from the 22nd of May. I do not have that ready to pull up.
I can share if you'd like, sir.
Please do so.
All right, there you go.
Kevin,
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented for May 22nd, 2024.
I'll second.
before we get a second. before we vote, would you mind just scrolling down through there so that we can see there are no changes or recommendations? Thank you.
It was a short one. I missed an E on my name under discussion around the code of conduct, third paragraph. Add an E to Kane.
We have a motion and a second with a request for one grammatical fix. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis abstains.
Gino Fratelloni,
Okay. Yes, sir.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane votes yes.
and Matt Wason abstains. The meeting minutes are approved for May 22nd. Last item on our agenda is correspondence with no key bullets. So, who has anything else to add? Kevin Baker.
I was just curious, Francis, if you had taken a look at a date for our retreat in the fall in September. I know everybody's schedules fill up really quickly, so I feel like we should try and get something on the books, whether it's a weekday evening, however you guys would like to organize that. I think we should start to think about it and plan it now. I know some of you guys travel for work too.
I can put out like a doodle poll or something.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kevin Davis.
Just to bring to people's attention, the FDA has authorized the new COVID shot, which will be the JN1 variant. So that's going to be coming out for our fall update, as well as our normal flu vaccines and things like that. So that'll be coming out. Also in happy news, it looks like Moderna is also looking at doing a combined flu and COVID-19 vaccination as well. Not for this fall, but potentially for next fall. So for all of those that want to participate in groundbreaking studies as people to receive a combined shot, take a look at their clinicaltrials.gov and sign up for some.
Thank you. Dan, anything?
I just have one item that Town Hall and Town Administrator's Office and the Select Board is working to put together a monthly town newsletter. So that anything from the Health Department or the Board of Health, if we have things that we'd like to go out to the community at large, we have that opportunity. They request that anything we have gets to them prior to the 15th of the month for a first of the month dispersal. There is a link available. I'm not sure if it went to all of your emails. Francis, I'm assuming you've seen this already, the link to add information to the...
Yeah, I did it for this month.
Perfect. All right, awesome. So just as a board, if we have things we want to, it's one more opportunity for us to be able to share information to the public. If you guys weren't aware that is an option. So just keep it in mind that, basically by middle of the month for a first of the month publication. So another opportunity.
Thank you. And Gino, any updates?
The update is that I have always, once in a while, a big problem trying to get it into Zoom. And I think it's time, Mr. Chairman, to get the meeting by person right here at the town hall. When the winter comes, then you can go Zoom for a while. I think it's the best thing to do is to be in person. Because sometimes this paper here is what baloney. I can't get through it. I got two computers and I can't get into it. That's why I'm here today. And I'm gonna mention it to the selectmen. Zoom is out of order for a long time. I leave it up to you now. You're the chairman.
So Gino, will you take your computer that you use and take it to town IT and get them to sit down and help and see if there's any problem that they can help remedy?
There is a lot of problems. Sometimes this thing here doesn't even show up in my phone. And then the numbers, you can't see it sometimes. It took me about half an hour trying to get it through.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, go ahead.
So the way that I actually get into this meeting is I actually go onto the Board of Health's page, Gino, and right on the Board of Health page has the Zoom link. And I purposefully click on that Zoom link to verify that the public can get into the Zoom meeting without issue on any computer. And I swap between different computers in my house, all the way from a cell phone to an iPad to a portable laptop to a desktop machine. And I do that varying computers to make sure that the link still continues to work through the public. So I think it's a valuable tool to be able to have the public be able to utilize this technology, because it opens up people to be able to get into a meeting more easily around everybody's busy schedules. So, yeah, I think we just need to work with you to try to get it into a system that'll work appropriately for your technology needs.
I'll give you another try if you just show me how to do it.
I'll work with him as well.
Yeah, I know sometimes as well, Gino, I've seen it before where if the agenda gets sent out, it's like a scanned document. And if it's not something I can click on, yeah, you're trying to read the, tiny letters and numbers. So Kevin's idea is a good one because it's always a link and all you have to do is click on it. And do you have to put the password in from that link, Kevin?
Nope.
Okay. So the password's written on the screen below it, but you don't actually even need to type it in. It's just
Yeah.
that one. Just that one link.
Trying to type in that HTTPS menagerie of 300 characters that's on a piece of paper, Gino, is not worth your time or effort, sir. You make one wrong move in that thing and you are out. It won't even work. So if that's what you're doing, we need to help you click on the link that's on the web page, that town, that occupies that announcement.
I'll give my break.
Yeah, let's Brenda or Francis, just before our next meeting, somebody just
I'll
if
sit
you
with him.
wouldn't mind sending out a link to that, just or a little reminder, like these are the steps, just to call it out because that'll be 2 weeks from now. So Gino, I don't want to. I agree. We need you here. We want you here. I don't want to make it hard for you. All kind of echo Kevin. Like I really like the Zoom personally, just because I can have so much information at my fingertips when I'm on my computer, and I can be looking things up and looking at maps, not necessarily just exactly what's being presented, because I want to get as much information as I have. So I see it as a positive, but I hear what you're saying. Like if we can't get everybody here, then that's not acceptable either. So let's give it a shot and see if we can find a smoother way to make it work. Because I know you used to be able to get on no problem. You were here a lot, and so let's just see if we can get back to a smooth process.
Okay.
Francis, any additional updates from you?
Nope. We're just moving right along.
All right. Kevin Baker,
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Sorry, I was on mute. Second.
Motion and second. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Whatever. I'm okay. Okay, you watch this here.
Is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Dan Kane,
Dan Kane votes yes.
and Matt Waston votes yes. Thank you all for a good meeting. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thank
Brenda.
you. Good night.